Hi everyone, my name is Andy, and we are streaming the Duke B team versus UT Dallas C. The games have just started, and it's the elimination round, so whoever loses is completely eliminated. Hopefully we don't choke like we did against UNC yesterday in football, but other than that, it should be a pretty fun watch. Let's start with Chase's game. Chase's black was a King's Indian. Played this against me the other day, and I lost, but that's because I hung a pawn. Okay, very classic f5 in, bishop's traded, g-file, open, queen coming in. Looks pretty aggressive from Chase as the open g-file here. But yeah. Chase in a bit of a think, but I mean, what would I play? I would probably play something just like King H8. No need to rush anything, but overall pretty equal position, which is pretty nice. Let's move over to another game. Veronica versus El Cavalry. Bit of a rating disadvantage for white, but you never know what's going to happen. Start off with knight f3 and sort of reverse London for black. Sort of a Slav, bishop e2, not challenging the bishop on f5. And then going for the double, this setup. Veronica often plays this as black. Interesting that she wants to play this as white as well. Rook on the c-file, very, very standard position here out of like a queen's pawn opening type position. But the bishop on b2 a little bit sort of useless at the moment. After the knight exchanged, Veronica took with the c pawn in order to open up the bishop. Makes a lot of sense. And bishop e4 now. And this position, I've had some of these types of positions myself, and I don't know, it seems pretty equal. Stockfish giving slight advantage to black, but I mean, very slight. A mate threat on the board, that's quickly resolved. And black does have this rook here and this queen, which is a little bit threatening towards the king, but should be no big deal as long as Veronica doesn't blunder something massive. Okay, let's move on to Richard's game. Richard versus Rochin. Richard is white, and looking at some sort of, looks like to me it's like a Dutch-like position. It was a sort of weird queen's. Oh, this is what Veronica plays as black, actually. Richard probably having some experience, given this is what Veronica plays. And Stockfish is liking white. Richard going with this d4 advance here, closing off black's dark squared bishop. There's an exchange on e4. The pawn is theoretically lost here in terms of numbers. However, black's king is very exposed, and if an exchange like this happens, there's probably just some rook e1. And yeah, this bishop on a3 is not doing too much right now, staring into the d6 pawn, but can easily pivot back to either b2 or c1 to get into the game this way. Black does go for the winning of the pawn. And let's see if Richard has some idea other than just taking and playing rook e1. Stockfish liking white's position a lot. Not after rook e1 though. There was probably some tactic that was missed, though I don't necessarily see it. Now it says the position is equal. White is down a pawn, but with a much safer king and a huge lead in development, the knight and the rook is not really in the game right now. So let's see if Richard can sort of pull this through and provide some more pressure onto his position. All right, let's go on to Alejandro's game. Alejandro, our strongest player. Looks like it was a Dutch Alejandro going for a strange opening. Looks like there's this strange, very strange shenanigans, the Raphael variation. Never heard of this before. Alejandro not trying to win a pawn, instead trying to mess up the king side, keep the pawn structure symmetrical. And though allowing this knight on e5, says, I don't give a fuck, and just leaves it there. Oh! Oh shit! What the hell? And there's a tactic here, and he spots it, and that's just, oh, that's so nasty. That's why he's our best player, destroying their 2,000 rated player in a matter of moves, tens of moves. They only move 17, and it's already completely winning for black. As long as he doesn't lose on time or blunder his own queen, he should have the game in the bag. This is fantastic play from Alejandro, spotting a tactic, the other player completely oblivious. Even I would have seen that tactic if I was white. I don't know how he got that 2,000 rating, but maybe he just got lucky or something. Yeah, this is a destruction position. White's king also completely exposed. Black simply having a queen for 2 minor pieces, which is completely winning. This knight here is a little bit flimsy. I mean, there might be some bishop. No, there's not. I'm an idiot. There's knight to g3, knight to f4. I mean, black's position is just completely winning here, and I feel like I don't even need to look at this anymore. Let's look at Chase's game, going back to the Queen's Indian defense. Yeah, white trying to have some play on the queen side, but I don't know. It seems interesting here. I mean, the knight obviously wants to come to b5. If pawn takes, rook takes b6, knight b5, I don't really like that for black. Instead, Chase just trying to get some attack going, maybe potentially some bishop and then bishop sacrifice options here, or even just doubling up on the g file looks pretty nice for black here. And we're just gonna see if white has any capability to get something started on the queen side. If the rook is able to come in, take the b pawn, and sort of create some problems here on the 7th rank, then maybe white has some sort of counterplay. But I mean, I like Chase's position here. I mean, maybe there's even just like rook g5 ideas, and then, you know, if you have to play g3, then you concede the g3 square, where black's dark square pieces can sort of just infiltrate. White also running very low on time, entering a deep think after I came to the board. He's probably just intimidated by my viewership. But I don't know, is he going to run out of time, or is... Wow, queen to e1, trying to trade the queens, and Chase just like, okay, I'm just going to take your pawn. And now, I mean, the g2 square is relatively weak. Right now, b7 is hanging. But let's see how Chase handles this. Chase also very low on time. Yep, going for the doubling as I expected. And after knight to e2, probably trying to get to e3 or something. I mean, or g3. I mean, that's just going to get kicked away. I don't know what he's trying to think here. And this pawn is suddenly very tender. g3 happening, that cannot be good. I mean, f4 looks bad because they can play g5. But, I mean, something here. e4... Probably prime provoke f4. But I mean, are you just going to sacrifice the bishop here? This is also a move. Queen takes here, and then after queen here. Oh my god, the time is so low for both players. Queen coming to the side of the board. Knight's kind of jumping in, but after c5, black wants to just play this, and then there's a major royal fork here. And that is just... the time scramble really got... to Chase's head here, but I mean, white's king is looking safer and safer as the time goes on, and white's just up an exchange. And that pawn's falling. Wow. And Chase saying that he thinks that his e3 pawn can handle, but what are we doing about this a7 pawn? I mean, how is this even... Oh, This is not looking good for the black team. White's just going to clean this one up. Alejandro destroying his opponent. Richard in a endgame that looks completely winning for black. Not looking too good for Richard here. Duke might go down 2 games. Let's see how Veronica is handling her position. Oh, looks like she's also in a losing endgame, which is depressing, but that's just how the game goes. Only Alejandro being able to take out one of UTD's players this round. Duke is going to have some serious work to do in the upcoming rounds to try and claw this one back. But there's still a lot of time. Positions are still lots of games to be played, so we're not out of the woods, or not out of the running yet. But not the best first round for Duke, losing 3-4. We're just getting warmed up though. Not a huge. I'm not scared. We don't want to. We're not gonna choke. I don't believe in the choke. But yeah. Chase looked like he was completely winning until blundering a fork in time pressure. Veronica and Richard's games looked sort of. Richard had some sort of advantage at the beginning, with some sort of potential ability to maintain some initiative, but after allowing black to castle, I think Richard just found it hard to have compensation for the lost pawn. And then after knight here, it looks like the rook and the knight were sort of lost to a tactic here. Actually, wait, what? Oh, the knight's coming in here. Oh, I see. So it's not a loss in material, but the more pieces that get traded. Oh, and there's a blunder on the thing here. We're just trying to go for some counterplay, but able to get off the queens, and there's just too many pawns. Black up 2 pawns. That's just the game. All right. Yeah. See if the other games have started. My computer, again, lagging a lot, providing some dramatic pause. A little bit annoying to operate on the streaming side, but that's okay. And yeah, it doesn't look like there's new games happening yet, but it could just be my computer. Let me try and find this. Looks like the games have started. It looks like UTD is sort of all together starting all their games at the same time. Let's start by looking at Richard's position. Why not? It looks like there was a Caro invitation declined. Bishop f4 looking at this London position. Richard going for a symmetrical London. Not trying to play with the doubled f pawns here. I like to go for that these days. And Richard just being pretty standard, very, very standard London position. This London bishop's not currently dealt with. This knight probably will come to f6 soon enough. Some pressure along the c file. Looks very, very equal, but also looks potentially boring. So let's move on. Veronica always loves very interesting openings, and this seems to be no exception. She's going for the same thing that Rochin did the last time. And Rochin not going for this e4, sticking with e3. And Veronica doubling the pawns, giving up the bishop pair. But Rochin getting activity. There's some knight to e6 ideas now. This pawn is hanging. And it looks like there's some pressure here on the king side, but I mean, at the end of the day, nothing too major. Veronica probably just going to develop her pieces, potentially get the knight out, potentially bring the bishop back to c8 to attack the queen. Doing the underdeveloping first, a mate threat occurring. There's g6, also h6. Bishop f5 also developing, defending the mate threat. Also somewhat threatening bishop g6. That's a pretty good move that I did not think of. And yeah, if g4, she can just go back, so it's not a huge deal. Knight d7 incoming. Also, like, this knight is sort of jumping into her Rochin's position. And yeah. Looks like a pretty solid position for Veronica. I mean, even if she loses this pawn, like, it's not a huge deal. I mean, these two pawns are very weak and sort of not moving anywhere, so not a huge deal for her. This pawn is actually a pretty big thorn in White's position, controlling d3 and f3, but I don't know. Pretty solid. Let's look at Chase's game. Chase threw the last game, but let's see if he can come back. Chase is a very aggressive player, going for knight f3. A very strange d5, h5, this coming from the guy who blundered his queen last game. d3, e5. This is weird, but okay. h4, just saying, I don't want to deal with this ever. There might have been some exchange sack happening. And Stockfish disliking Chase's position. It is a bit weird. It's like a weird King's Indian attack sort of position. a4, going for some flank pawns. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. The knight coming into f5. Pawn on f5 is weak. And yeah, in this position, that pawn on e5 is probably falling, and Chase's king side is sort of busted. I'm assuming that black is going to try and castle queenside and attack. But yeah, even though Stockfish says that black is much better here, I mean, the guy did blunder a queen last game, so. Yeah, this is not looking good for white. This rook, the file is opening. The queen here is X-raying. I mean, I don't even know what to do. I mean, queen f3 looks like pretty solid. Just trying to like make sure everything's defended. But you got to get this knight out of here. And with this f pawn missing and this h4 advance, it really weakened white's king side to the point of the fact that black can just sort of open up the files. And black with this relatively safe haven on the queen side can really start piling up. So yeah, not liking this position for Chase too much, but he's pulled out of worse. So yeah. Let's take a look at the last game. Alejandro going for the bird opening, taking some things out of Arya's book, which we watched last week. I guess he's just in this phase of liking pushing the f pawn. I mean, he went with the Dutch last time, and the guy blundered his queen. So yeah, it looks like a very standard bird opening with h3, maybe some g4 action. There's some sort of tension in the center of the board. Knight's coming to a3 to c4. This knight has a nice outpost here, but the knight could come to g3 at some point. And yeah, this position is pretty double-edged. I mean, there's some tension here on the long diagonal. White's king is again pretty exposed. This knight here is pretty annoying, pseudo annoying. Stockfish not liking queen c7. I'm not smart enough to figure out why. But I mean, what would I play in this position? I definitely wouldn't take here. I like sort of eliminating things that I wouldn't do. Queen e1 was on my radar as well, sort of controlling this knight. I'm also saying, okay, I might be able to come in the future, but I mean, when you put this bird opening here and you don't get a pawn in the center yourself, and black has this huge pawn center, it sort of feels like white is playing black here, which some people are into. long thinking by both players on this board. I mean, it's only move 13, and there's both players only have 1 to 2 minutes left. Alejandro with double the time. And Black decides to relieve some tension. He couldn't handle it, and Stockfish is disapproving. Probably saying that now you've just left yourself with 2 isolated C pawns. And though there's going to be potentially some exchange here on the king side, I guess the idea is that Black doesn't want White to take with the knight, because I mean obviously that would lead to a drop of the bishop. Is there some bishop takes g7 Zwischenzug, or in between move here? I mean, if takes the pawn, then takes. Yeah, I don't think that was going to work because White was going to lose a pawn at the end of the line. But here, I mean, there's no worries. The knight can obviously recapture, and this is a perfect outpost for the knight. These doubled c pawns are very weak, and despite Alejandro having a backwards e pawn, I think the c pawns are very arguably worse. This bishop is probably going to come to this long diagonal, put pressure on the backwards c6 pawn, and there's not really a good way for Black to take advantage of the backwards e pawn since the knight's already here, but the queen is sort of protecting everything. So yeah, I like Alejandro's play here. I like e5 as a move, sort of taking advantage of the knight has left from its outpost. Also saying you can't play bishop f3 because I mean you're going to lose a pawn. Actually, you're not. No, you are. I'm a bit slow. I wonder what Alejandro's going to do here. I mean, I wouldn't want to take because that seems not thematic, because then you are left with an isolated pawn. But in other words, like if you don't allow it to take, this bishop can't come to the long diagonal, which is I think is where it wants to be. But I mean, you don't really have to do anything. I could maybe just see myself playing knight c4, bringing it back to the nice outpost. Though it might be a little vulnerable from there, from like some bishop attack. So maybe knight d3, attacking c5. Bishop d3 also. I mean, it definitely requires some calculation to play that, because like you don't want there to be any knight discoveries. But since the queen covers all of the knight's forward moves, it's probably actually okay. And White sort of begging Black to take on f5, but I think that would only help White because, honestly, of 2 reasons. I mean, maybe he can just take with the rook and sort of coordinate on c7 square, bishop can come to c4, and let's see if Alejandro likes that. And he does, saying that, okay, this e3 pawn I don't really care, this was my plan all along, I'm going to try and coordinate on the light squares, maybe try and swing the rook over for some sort of attack. Let's look at the results of the other games. No decisive results yet. This game is quickly coming to an end because both players are low on time. Knight f5 sort of begging for g4. I don't know if that's very risky, and Alejandro opts out of it for a move, just saying that I don't want your knight to be taking on e3 first. But after this, I mean, g4 looks bagged here. I mean, I don't... Yeah, there he goes. And then, knight d6. And then maybe now some knight c4 ideas. I mean, this looks very obvious. Then after rook here, I mean, you can take, and... Oh, you can't take yet. And then play bishop c4. And after bishop e6... rook to f6, pitting this. Well, this is some nice geometry here. Maybe rook to f1. Getting the bishop out of the way, saying that I'm threatening your rook. Rook comes back to f4, blocking the queen. All the games coming down to sort of a scramble here. I want to see how this game is going to end. The rook getting kicked away. Hopefully there's no blundering here. There is also rook f6, but potentially there's some danger of that. And the time is, oh my goodness, the time was nearly out for Black there. Alejandro with 10 seconds looking for some h4 push. He's probably trying to get c4 in. Is he gonna stop that? No, just saying I'm gonna attack myself. This makes a lot of sense. Saying I don't care about this. This bishop is hanging. There we go. The rook's hanging. This pawn here is falling. That's just mate. So we have a win for white. Alejandro taking him out in the time scramble. Very classy. Let's look at Chase's position. My computer is completely frozen, probably because of all the nastiness. This looks pretty drawn. It's an opposite colored bishops endgame. Just a time scramble. Yeah, this is a complete draw here. Probably. Let's move on to Veronica's game. Richard lost. Veronica is black or white? Veronica is black, getting a draw as well. Richard losing his position in a losing endgame. So I think that is a 2-2. Yeah, there's some attack going for Richard, or against Richard here, and he had to probably lose some pawns. Wait, Richard is black here. He must have blundered it away somehow in time pressure. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that's bad. He was up a bunch of pawns, and oh, that's just... Probably time pressure got to Richard here, which is unfortunate, but that's just how it goes. Chase and Veronica both getting half a point. Duke now at 3-5. Not narrowing the gap, but not expanding the gap. It's a step in the right direction. If we use a linear projection, the number of points that Duke is getting per match, then we should still be able to win this match. Hopefully the linear model will work. Oh! Whoa! Oh, Chase flagged him! Oh, another throw by the guy who threw his queen away last game. In a completely drawn position, Chase was actually to win the game. That's kind of clutch. So Duke actually at 3.5. That, I mean, Nick is having a really bad day. Not only has he been hanging his queen, but also hanging the game in a completely drawn position. Wonder if it's his internet. But to be honest, I don't really give a fuck as long as we're winning. All right, I'm gonna get some water real quick. But that was sort of ridiculous, the ending there, but yeah. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful flagging skills by Chase here. And yeah, let's see when the next games start. Yeah. It seems like Dallas is playing in the same room, starting all their games at the same time, which sort of makes it a little bit annoying for me. I feel like my computer is lagging. But yeah, game should start momentarily. Let me reload. It seems like whenever I reload the page that the games sort of update. So let's get that going. And yes, the games have started. I think it's just my computer is slow. Let's start by looking at Alejandro's game. We love starting with Alejandro. Alejandro going for another Dutch defense, the Staunton Gambit, which is knight c3. Opposite size castling. White probably trying to get some attack on black here. Black should probably start pushing his pawns. there's b5. Wow. Just sacking a pawn. And to be honest, I don't really see why. To be honest, I don't really get it at all. Maybe it was a misclick, but I don't know. Let's look at some other games. Let's look at Chase versus Rochin. Chase again going for the King's Indian. Rochin declining, similarly to how he declined Veronica's, and then actually got a draw. Chase going for c6, King h8. Not too sure what's going on there, but probably looking for, yeah, f5, e5 eventually. Wow, Chase trapping his own knight. That's poor. Chase probably getting a little bit too fancy here. Actually, I'm confused. No, I think the best move is probably just takes. Because this is actually interesting. The knight can only go to f3, and then you can take, and then it's actually defended. But if you simply just take the knight and takes, not only do you win a pawn, but these pawns are pretty exposed, and this pawn is kind of a thorn, because, you know, even after you attack it with something like queen e8, you can just play maybe like bishop. Actually, I really don't know what's going on here. Chase entering sort of a deep think. Oh, not a deep think. I'm just not up to date. Exactly, this happened. H takes queen e8, king g2, and yeah, I mean, I would just take this pawn here. No reason to keep it alive. No reason to keep it alive. And Stockfish actually saying, you know what, this was not the best way to go. So I guess taking this way wasn't the thing that Stockfish was seeing. I don't have any idea what Stockfish is seeing, as per usual. This bishop is probably going to get developed here. Maybe come back to f2 to try and guard against h5. Though h5 is pretty well defended against using this knight and stuff. So I'm not exactly sure. But looks like a pretty nice, very comfortable position for Chase. Chase seems to like these, you know, double king exposed positions and sort of going for an attack. White trying to be solid with bishop g3, turning it into a pawn. And I mean, does this not just blunder f5? f5 takes, and what the fuck is going on here? Like, I mean, if UTD keeps playing like this, they're gonna lose. And using the linear projection model that I was talking about earlier, I mean, Duke should be destroying here. There is some bishop d3 ideas here, but I think just I actually don't see it. There's bishop f5 ideas, but that doesn't, I mean, the bishop can just move afterwards. So I guess maybe you're not winning the bishop. But yeah, I don't know. Stockfish really liking Black's position. I mean, I really like Black's position, but maybe not winning material immediately. Chase should probably be a little bit concerned about time. Chase saying, okay, I want to keep as much material on the board as possible, and then after, and with this move, even after you take here, it's still fine. And now there's, that's doomed. There's queen to h3, and then pawn to g2 probably, or pawn to f3 coming in. There's also knight to g4. I mean, this is just, I mean, how do you even defend against knight g4? You have to sack the queen. Beautiful stuff by Chase here. Really taking complete advantage of Rochin's terrible attempt at turning his bishop into a pawn. I mean, that just doesn't work these days. I mean, you would really know that if you played Bughouse, which Chase does occasionally. So maybe Rochin needs to play some more Bughouse. That's the moral of the story. And that's just me. The hell. Beautiful game by Chase. Very clean. Very in control. We love to see that, bringing us up to 4.5 for the game. Let's see how Alejandro is doing. Alejandro, it looks like white did take this pawn here, but Alejandro having some activity with the rooks. The rook is potentially taking, but wow, that is relatively clean. Saying you're not getting to the e-file, get the fuck out of my house. But now white gets to be able to defend the f2 pawn, and I think he's just simply up a pawn here. This is very interesting. I mean, I would probably just play rook to e1 if I was white here, getting doubled on the e-file. King to d8, d1 is a bit odd, but okay. I don't really know. This makes a lot of sense. That's a pretty good move. I like that move, saying if you take, you're going to connect my pawns again. If you move, I'm getting to the e-file. Alejandro trying to keep everything nice and tidy. And yeah, white's getting to the e-file, and I don't really like Alejandro's chances here. The pigs are coming to the 7th and king to e. That just looks like he can't even respond with rook to f1. Wow, that's clean. Saying that you're not going to be able to take this one even if the king moves, and Alejandro saying, okay. Being able to trade off a pair of rooks. It is still relatively close though. If Alejandro can not trade off other pair of rooks and potentially win some pawns, this rook is slightly more active. His king, relatively small. I mean, yeah, I would get the fuck over here as soon as possible. And, you know, after a3 or b3, it's still a tough position. White probably better. Veronica taking a loss against the guy who hung his queen and hung the game, the last one. Hopefully we can get some luck in Richard's game. That's cannot be good. Going into a king and pawn endgame, down a pawn, and now the king is coming to f3. The only saving grace Alejandro has is that these two pawns are connected, sort of forms a wall. But at the end of the day, white has just too many pawns. That's a good move. Yeah, this is not looking too amazing for Alejandro. a5, I don't like that move. I feel like this is just completely losing. Let's move on to Richard's game. Wow. A very, very complex position. Black almost flagging. It was a Slav defense with a g5 push. This g5 pawn, very odd. And coming to the, wow, no castling, and oh, this is just so what? The bishop on a8, the knight is pinned, the king is, I don't know what the, oh. Stockfish likes white's position, but I mean the time pressure is really critical. There's a fork. Oh, a fork on f3, and that's just a clean rook. And there was a fork on the d2 pawn too. The only saving grace here is that Richard can flag his opponent, but black simply up a rook. I don't know how that's gonna happen. c6. A pair of rooks get traded off. Black's king is a little bit exposed. Maybe there's some hope with some bishop f5, bishop d7 ideas. But, I mean, at the end of the day, black can just move to d8. No, taking the knight, I wouldn't have done that. Yeah, I mean, Richard's just down a clean rook, and yeah, taking the two pawns for the, no, this is not looking good. he is only down in exchange, but he's down a pawn as well. So it's very difficult. You can't really defend everything. But this is interesting. Oh no, it's not that interesting. There's a5. After here. I mean, this is just looking poor. Not looking too amazing for the Duke team. We're going to really have to pull out something out of our... Oh, that is just nasty from Pat. Chase being the only person to get a point on the team, and it looks like we have to get 4 wins or 3 wins and a draw in order to tie the game to have a chance at playoffs. A little bit concerning. The linear classifier does not work here. I think I already marked down Chase's point. Let me check real quick. Yeah, they have 7.5. So we can't lose a single game in this last round, which is going to be pretty difficult, I think. Might be the end of Duke B Team CCL, which would be depressing, but that's okay. Let's see if any of the new games have started. UTD probably celebrating significantly here. But that's just how these things go. New games just started, but this is a very critical matchup here. And yeah, let's see if people can get some points here. Veronica going for her very classic opening with this d6, g6 thing and f5, hoping to get some sort of tension here in the center. Haven't watched any of her games yet this time, so let's take a look at this one. Stockfish does not like this opening, but it is pretty tricky to play once you're in. So yeah, Duke probably going for some more aggressive openings. Only can allow 1 draw. We'll see if we can pull it through. Okay, let's get some overview about what's going on. Chase going with English symmetrical. Not too symmetrical later on. I don't really like White's position here. This is looking a bit cramped here. Yeah, this is not looking amazing. What the fuck is this queen doing on b1? Let's get Richard's position. Richard going with, again, a reverse London with this knight here. Takes, and then h3 hitting. I mean, there is some c5 pushes eventually. This pawn on e5 can be a little weak. I mean, castling looks pretty normal here. Queen c7. I mean, I guess f5 is probably going to come after queen c7, but maybe queen c7. Oh, that's nice. Look at that nice fork. We love that for Richard here. That's very solid. Let's look at Alejandro's game. Alejandro again going with the bird opening, e6. Rochin liking this triple pawn setup, which I think is pretty cute. Don't know if it's good, but at least it's cute. Making some spaces for his king. Alejandro seems to think that his king has like claustrophobia, likes to open up the position around his king a little bit more, which has been working out for him. So, I mean, I'm not one to talk here. He would destroy me in any game that we played against each other, but I think it theoretically goes against regular chess principles, which is not Not necessarily a bad thing. Knight here is pretty smart, trying to attack c2. We've been blundering a lot of forks in all our games today, so hopefully Alejandro doesn't blunder this one. Definitely won't. But I guess the question remains, do you take and sort of allow this pawn to be taken by the queen? Or do you move the queen up and potentially drop this pawn? So I think Alejandro is in a little bit of a tough spot here. Probably losing a pawn in some sense. G5. Bit of a crazy move, walking into the fork. But potentially saying, okay, I'm going to go queen here and attack you. Alejandro not playing it safe, probably knowing that we have to win. But I don't know if it's smart to win by getting yourself into a crazy lost position. Let's go back to Chase's game. If he got out of the weird queen b1 maneuver. Looks like material is relatively equal. d3, knight takes, bishop takes. Yeah, black trying to get a mate threat, rook coming to defend, and then after takes bishop here. I mean, I feel like you gotta take this rook because you're gonna lose the pawn, but you're also losing this pawn. This is looking not amazing. Yes, black's king is exposed, but white king is sort of tight with the black pawn here. Yeah, I don't really know what is going on. Material, Chase is actually up a pawn. But again, this king side is so weak. Maybe it's just like here. Now like king to h2 or something. Like, I don't know. Stockfish hating this. Probably because, you know, there's bishop discoveries now. And not only that, the queen is coming into h3. So, yeah. This is tough. I mean, I think you have to play something like queen f2, queen f1 to defend against h3. But then you lose b2, the rook is coming into e2. I mean, this pawn on f3 is a significant hindrance to white's success here. Yeah, that's still... Chase is going to have to claw himself out of that. And queen f1 played. Let's look at Veronica's game. For opening, with a5, knight to d8. And... yeah. White has a lot more space. This is pretty cool, taking advantage of this pin down here. Obviously, all the UTD players are trying to... are trying to just get draws. And draws are super good for them. Trading off the pieces, and in this position, yeah, not looking too great. I mean, what would I play? Does d6 work here? d6 takes here, and then it's eternally pinned, so maybe rook takes. But then after the queen moves, like, you're gonna have to trade up your rooks. Though, okay, yeah, I think that's okay. d6, wow! Veronica opting for the queen for 2 rooks, but also opting for the 2 pawns with the queen to 2 rooks. Wow, this is a very, very imbalanced game. Veronica probably saying that, oh, I can push this for a win. Honestly, potentially a smart move by black here. And wow, is the rook on e8 trapped? I mean, Stockfish says no, but Stockfish always says no. Rook to b8. I mean, the bishop probably has to go to c6. Luckily, the knight defends c7, but yeah, this is... Ooh. Ooh. That's a good move. Getting those bishops off was probably pretty smart. But, I mean, at the end of the day, this rook is still pretty trapped. The queen will become active. And there's a lot of play here for black. And I'm excited to see how Veronica can take this. Chase is completely lost here. He's down a bishop. That was probably going to be the end of the match. How is Richard doing? Richard looking... looking pretty weird. Is it doubled A pawns? White has it doubled E pawns. I guess it's pretty equal. Black has more sort of people in White's camp. But yeah, I don't know what's going on here. This is a major fork possibility. Maybe there was some knight here. Shenanigans. I don't really know. These are too complicated, dude. The knight's defending c5. I mean, you can't take this. But you also don't want to let the rooks get on the 7th. Yeah, I was going to play rook to a2, but I feel like just rook to c7, rook to d7. But I guess there's rook f1. The knight sort of guards this from behind, and yeah. Oh, Alejandro falling to Roshan 2. This is looking poor for the Duke team. Potentially pushing too hard for a win led to loss. Veronica's king is sort of weird. There's like knight here, but also knight there. Takes. There's also queen takes bishop there. Yeah, honestly, I like this. I like the 2 rooks for the queen call, actually. Oh, Veronica lost on time. Rip. Richard here also very low on time. Oh, that's just completely lost. Oh, and they clean sweep us the 4th round.